you see, the thing is now, like I was getting concerned because every time he makes point, which keeps on leading us to another point, and I was now.
It's a conversation. It's a conversation.
Yes, yeah, it is a conversation indeed. No, okay. So then now my next question is, what policy directives, if there are any policy directives that if you were in charge of this portfolio of public asset management, would you put in place? And then on the point of saying the essence of understanding asset management, I think this is how I understood Mashilo. How can this be imparted? Is it something that can be imparted perhaps through education pedagogically, or is it like, how can this culture be imparted so that people can understand the essence of asset management? So the first question is on policy directives that you put in place if you're in charge of this portfolio. And the second question is, how can this culture be imparted?
The first one, I'll leave it to my colleague, Bafiki. His chain of thought, because that's where he started. And it's a very good chain of thought. And then I'll think that he must finish that chain of thought with regard to policies and stuff like that. And then I'll tail on what he'll say.
Okay. Geez, I wasn't expecting. It's not a hospital pass. It's not a hospital pass. I wasn't expecting it though. It's a forward pass. It's a forward pass in rugby. But anyway, when Ndosi, maybe it's better if I call you Ndosi. Then I won't make a mistake and call you Mlondi.
I know people that do that. Don't worry. I know people like, I don't know. They do that all the time.
No, they shouldn't. But anyway, Ndosi, I don't think. You know, I don't know. I'm a little bit fatigued with layers and layers of policy. If something doesn't work in South Africa, what do we do?
We make another policy.
Exactly. So I am policy fatigued. I am regulation fatigued. I think we're just so overregulated. So perhaps I would maybe it's very utopian of me to think that way, but I'd rather say, okay, fine. Can you revalidate our NIM strategy? Can we revalidate our Kiyama Act, polish it up, evolve it a bit? Because of course, it was passed in 2007. The world has moved on now, but can we just start there with the basics? Because Mashilo referred to it and it was there in its genesis. So for me, in our generation and cohort, it probably knows better than most about what was the strategic intent, the why that it was answering, and whether 14 years down the line is doing that. Similarly with NIMS. If you take, and you use the good example of a school, the respect that a community has for a school and the direct line that they make between cause and effect. You know, I want this result, so I'm gonna behave in this manner. The same thing I think is going to happen, or we're not far from it, in terms of the level of E. coli in our water and understanding how critical a resource water is for drinking, for cooking, washing, and all the things we use water for. But if I look at, and maybe I use examples like visible buildings, but if you look at our wastewater treatment works, somebody once said that probably the biggest healthcare workers in South Africa are probably the engineers who designed and the contractors who built these wastewater treatment works. They are sometimes the unsung heroes. I know you're not an electrical engineer, so neither am I. In fact, I'm no engineer. No, for sure. I'm a project manager that studied construction management. And so, the water waste, the level of deterioration of our wastewater treatment works, and maybe once it start affecting the water we're supposed to drink, and we think twice about what comes out of a tap, all of us, public officials and not public officials, because we think water comes from a tap when it doesn't. Then maybe things will begin to change, I hope. Because yes, we know what the problems is, and now you're asking a pertinent question in terms of the second half of this conversation. So what are the solutions? What would I do? Personally, what I would do, I would want to be pragmatic, that the foundational work for what asset management is about in terms of policy, guidance, strategy is there. Can we now go, South Africa's favorite word that we don't see, and go and implement? But implementation, of course, depends on how does Dr. Josienzo Ramahopa like to put it, a technocratic, patriotic, state bureaucracy. And I think there's a lack there. And I think, personally, I would love to read your PhD, Mashilo, because I think it's going to go into the philosophical aspects as well as the practical aspects of it, and what would happen if we don't answer the why properly. And for me, and I know it's a term that gets thrown around a bit too casually, but there's no leadership. There is no leadership to tackle this issue.
It is for those obvious reasons that I did a through pass, right? Because at least if it's by you and not pass. Me, it's not a forward pass. I like the forward pass. It's not a self-interest, and it says just because you're part of some document, then you want to be passionate about it. 100%. The policies are there. Giama, from day one of the problems with the implementation of Giama has not been about whether it works or not. It's the objection to it. And the objection to Giama was about the amount of work it required. I accept it requires a lot of work, but the beauty about it, and Bafikile, you say that quite a lot. The beauty about it is that once you have done that work up front, you don't have to do it again. Once you have figured out what do I need to do with my water treatment or my waterworks, I do that once. I don't have to plan again 10 years. I know my waterworks are here for 50 years. And for me to maintain them, I need to have 3 or 5 engineers, and those 5 engineers, and then what do I do? It's a simple thing. It goes back to your initial question. Then I say, okay, I'm building the waterworks, and I know for maintenance, I need these type of engineers. What I'm going to do, it's gonna take me 2 years to build this thing. I'm going to go to university. I'm gonna sponsor some students who are engineering students. And when this waterworks is finished, they're gonna be employed on it. And over time, I'll keep training, I'll keep investing in those similar type of engineers, because these ones, when they grow, I'll replenish them with other ones and rotate. Now, that model is not new. This is why Eskom was built. This is why Telkom was built at the time. This is why the post office existed. Why? Eskom was a commission. It was not a company, it was a commission. Its job was to generate electricity. The other part of its job is to say, we know to generate electricity, we need engineers and electricians. So you, Eskom, you must make sure that you not only give us electricity, but you use a cohort of South Africans to do that. So that's why Eskom, if you look at Eskom, majority up until maybe the early 2000s, majority of people that worked at Eskom, 90% of people that worked at Eskom had a bursary from Eskom. Why? Yeah. It is not by accident. It's for exactly the same reason, Mlondi, you are raising about the skills, that when you create an asset, you must, if you plan it well, and that's what Giama wanted. Giama insists on that. It says, what you want the asset for, what are you going to use it for, who's going to be the user, and then it asks you the question about maintenance, about the skills that are required, and where are you going to get the skills. If you need an engineer, it will ask. You must say, when you procure that asset, where am I going to get the skill? If the engineer doesn't exist, you'll then say, I'll create a budget for me and you're not going to have that problem. Because by the time the asset arrives, by the time you build the stadiums, there is civil engineers behind that. So it's not only, the capital budget is not only about bringing the asset into fruition. The capital budget is also about making sure that, and I like the life cycle, and that's what the language of IUK is, an asset manager. He uses the language, life cycle management. You know, for the life cycle of this asset, I'm gonna need an engineer. Moses Mabhida has got an escalator. You know you're gonna need a mechanical engineer for the life of that thing. But I can tell you now, if you go there and you ask them, they've got some contract with some company that changes every 3 years. You understand? You imagine the life of that thing is probably older, 50 years. And to train an engineer takes you 4 years, plus 3 years of practical, 7 years. How many 7 years are in 50 years? and those are the kind of thinking that goes into engineering. Then the skill issue, it becomes mute. It's no longer an issue because it's part of your planning. You planned it up front. Your next part of the question, it's actually a very interesting question in a sense that, and a good example is how we dealt with the 2010 stadiums. Now there's some of them, they deserve to be demolished, by the way. There's a stadium in Pitjeng. There's a big stadium and the next stadium next to it. And I remember in the times during those days, one of the debates, because I was still in municipality, and I happened to be on part of the infrastructure guys that were built in the 2010. And one of the debates, and I'm using KZN as a debate, but that debate happened everywhere, even with Loftus, was, do I upgrade Kings Park, add additional seats after the World Cup, just remove those seats? Then I preserve capital, right? Or do I build a new stadium? Now, if you ask politicians to take the decision, they'll tell you, I want a new stadium because they've got something to cut a ribbon with. But if you go to Bafiki and you ask him and say, Bonke, what do you want to do? He's going to say to you, no. Facilities management of this thing post the World Cup is, this thing is going to be, I'm not going to have the resources to do it. You understand? So just upgrade it for temporarily. Then after that, remove the thing. They do it with stadiums. When there's a festival, I build a stage for the guy to perform. After the festival, I remove the stadium. That's proper asset management. And you do that in the private sector. There's nothing that stops government to think the same way. It doesn't require degrees and PhDs. It just requires you to have the right people. If you go to a typical asset facilities manager today, and you give them one government building, and you say to them, what can you do with this building? Believe you me, it will save this government, even the previous government, billions and billions of money on simple solutions that they could apply if they could just go to the NIMS and they could just, because Giama is the legislated part of NIMS. That's what it is. If you go back there, believe you me, we wouldn't even have this discussion because by its nature, it's got a built-in system that recycles itself, renews itself. The challenge that we have is a challenge that the country has that we can't solve, is a challenge of that we were talking about earlier, that we saw a pipeline, it's called procurement, and all of us are thinking procurement every day we wake up. We don't think the asset, we think the asset is, and that's where our eyes are focused.
But, just to labor on that point as well, don't we, I think from what you are saying, for me, it sounds like we have a tail wagging the dog, so to speak, because we've got politicians in the forefront, and politicians have a 5-year lifespan. The assets you're talking about are 50-year lifespan. So the politician is only thinking 5 years, or whatever the period is. For this, you've made an example with the stadium. If I know that my name is going to be on that stadium, that's all that matters to me, because after 5 years, I won't be there anymore. But at least I'll have a legacy. Yeah. I'll have a legacy that my stadium is named after me. So, I would like you guys, your opinion on this. It sounds to me like we have the politicians wagging the dog where they shouldn't be wagging the dog. They are in charge of things they shouldn't be in charge of.
Yeah,
Bonke.
Look, maybe, but the question is, and it takes me back to the reasoning behind you having the asset, right?
Yeah.
The politician has got a reason, and believe you me, if his reason is I'm gonna have my name on this thing, he will fight to get that capital budget. Believe you me, you don't even have to go.
Why? That's his why.
Why stacked up? You understand?
Mashilo, sorry to interject, but I wanted you to also deal with how the essence, the why of can be imparted. I think you didn't deal with that part, or I might have missed it when you were dealing with this question. How can you said it's not a skill, it's something that one should you appreciate the essence of managing these assets. I don't know if is it second nature? How can this be imparted? Can it be imparted through it? Could you put people through the bedroom and you say, guys, you see, it's very important to manage your asset very well. How does it get imparted on one? How to impart this skill?
So the first one is you've answered the question by where you started. Just employ the right people. Believe you me,
Right.
your 50% of your headache is you just have to have wrong people in the right position.
Yeah.
If I want to maintain facilities, where do I go? I go to a facilities manager.
Yeah.
Now, if I employ the right facilities manager for whatever asset, whether it's a dam, whatever, if I get the right facilities manager, and Mafiki will tell you, he will know who to bring in that team. He will know that. 50% of the headache is going to go away. He'll bring the right skill in place. He'll bring the right knowledge in place. He'll bring the right systems, the right processes in place, day one. Then you understand, 50% of the headache is gone. The second 50% is just the governance, the network, the system around in which, the environment around which you operate. And those are what you alluded to correctly, to say, what are the policies that are in place? Are those policies talking to what we want to do? Those right people would solve the other 50%, because those right people, if they realize that the policies that are in place are not allowing them to do the work, they will motivate for those things to be changed. You understand? So you are on the right track in the question that you're asking. The question, it goes back to what Bonke was saying, to say, what is preventing us to do it? He's right as well, to say, we know what is right, but we're not doing it. You understand? So just that's what it is. We must just do what is right. It's there, it's written, it's on document. Believe you me, the next person they hire in the asset management department in government is going to be somebody who has a degree in, I don't know, transport economics or something. You understand? So that becomes part of the problem. Because now you must solve two headaches. You must solve the headache of, I've got a wrong person in the right place, and I don't have enough skills in the place, and this thing is falling apart.